Good morning. So, I hope that you have had a wonderful weekend, and I am going to take some time to go over a little bit of change. So, now that we know that we're not coming back to school, we are going to finish out our school year online. And so, what we're going to do is they've tried to organize the district, not me. The district has tried to organize how to keep everybody from not overlapping, so like teachers not making you have to sign in to Google Classroom or something at a certain time when you're supposed to do it for another teacher. So with that, what they've done is they've allowed science, so that's us, to meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12:30 p.m. to 2 p.m. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be online with me the whole time or anything like that. What that means is you need to check in with me. That means I'm probably going to be posting either a question or something in Google Classroom. I will make myself available. I'll let you know what days and what times I'm available for tutoring. I'm going to kind of use that in a flexible way. So I'll be letting you know how I'm using that depending on what we're learning that week. So stay tuned. Make sure you're checking your school loop because I will let you know how that's going to be handled. Today, I'm going to do some tutoring, but you are going to have to let me know that you want to be available because Zoom needs passwords. And I learned that last week. So we will not be doing that again. So if you want actual help, then you need to let me know that you would like to be part of that Zoom. And I will have to give you the meeting code and everything. So that means you have to like notify me ahead of time. So I'm looking to do that from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock today. And this is Tuesday, April 7th. So I'm going to be posting this code in our school loop, and I've already put that up on school loop. So please make sure that if you want to do that, that you need to go ahead and notify me so that you can come in. Um, Today, we're talking about population growth factors. Okay, that's your assignment today. And we're going to be working on this all week, and we're going to add a little bit of information. There will be a quiz on Friday, just like we have been. I will reopen the ecology quiz again this Friday, like I did last week for Sex Linked. And for people who want to retake the quiz, or you just you missed it for whatever reason, you can go ahead and take it as a first time. And so I'm going to be working on grades and doing all of that stuff here. Um, throughout the week. It's a lot of grading, guys. Keeping track of everything is a lot, and I'm adjusting, so please be patient. But if you are concerned, send me an email. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But just know that I'm doing what I can. I have a life and a family too, and I don't want to spend 15 hours in front of a computer, just like you don't want to spend 15 hours in front of a computer. So let's work together and let's figure that out. Okay. Today's assignment with the vocabulary, I'm going to go over that in a second here. You're going to do that on page 93 in your notebook. However, this time around, I'm not going to have you take a picture of it. I'm not going to have you turn it in. But I will highly suggest that you're going to want that on your quiz because we are going to have a quiz on it on Friday. So you can use your notes and everything on your quiz. It's just finding that it's too hard for me on this side to click through every single assignment. And that's what's taking me so long. And my internet is not the best. So, I just need to make sure that we can get through grading. But ultimately, my goal is for you to learn, for you to understand. And so it's not about busy work for me. It's just a matter of you being able to learn it. So please make sure you're doing that because it's only going to benefit you. And it's going to help you with the quiz, which does count for points. Okay, so please make sure you do that. Also, eventually we're going to be talking about how things change over time. And all these things are going to come back, and you're going to have to be able to explain them. So that's kind of where we're going. So you're just aware of that. Today, what we're going to do is I'm just going to go over some of those words because I want to make sure that even though you're writing them down and you're looking them up and you're trying to understand the graphs and everything, that you understand how it all goes together. So last week, I didn't talk anything about symbiotic relationships, but remember that in a community, remember a community is all the organisms in a given area. So if we're talking about Borneo, we're talking about the mosquitoes, the cats, the rats, we're talking about the geckos, we're talking about the humans. They're the community of Borneo, right? And so we see that in communities or in ecosystems, even, remember, ecosystems are biotic, both living and abiotic, non living. So temperature, the weather, right? The type of soil, all those things. We can see how they impact each other. So when we're talking about relationships, typically we're talking about community, and it talked about three different relationships. There could be really good relationships where both populations benefit, and that's called mutualism, right? That's where both get a benefit from the relationship. They're helping each other. And then there are parasitic relationships, which is where one benefits and the other one is harmed. We saw that in our parasitic wasp and the caterpillar, meaning that the parasitic wasp was benefiting because it was giving its babies food that it needed, and the caterpillar was ultimately dying and being harmed by these wasps. So we see that that was a parasitic relationship. And then we saw commensalism, right? And commensalism is just where one benefits and another one is not harmed. It's really not bothered one way or another. And one of the examples of this could be like a shark and a remora fish. The remora fish sit underneath the shark. They literally swim right underneath the shark. The shark doesn't want to eat the remora fish. It's after other food. And so the remora just wants to catch some scraps of whatever comes out of the shark's mouth. And so the remora just kind of cruises on along with the shark, and it picks up any of the scraps that the shark doesn't get. And so basically the remora fish is benefiting, and the shark, it's not bothered because it's still going to get food and it's not trying to eat the remora. So it's commensalism. Those are three relationships that we saw, like that show dynamics between organisms, because we're going to see that these relationships are going to affect how the populations change over time. And that's really what I want to actually start zooming in on. Ecologists have to look, like, even with the mosquitoes, right, and the cats and the rats and all those populations that we saw going out of control, we had to say, like, hey, why is the rat population increasing all of a sudden? Because normally there's this balance, right? Normally it's the cats and the rats, they balance each other out because they have a relationship. Now, that relationship is a predator and prey, right? We're going to talk a little bit more about that this week. And so we know that cats are the predators of rats, right? And so they're going to eat the rats for their food. And so we know that as long as there's cats around, they have food to eat in the rats, right? And so they have this balancing act. Now, what happens if the cats go away? Right? Something's happening to the cats. Now, these rats are not being eaten anymore. They're not prey anymore. And so now they're going to grow in number, right? And so we see an increase in the rat population. An imbalance occurred because the cat population died off because of the poisoning, right? Because they were eating those geckos too. And so now there is no balance for our rat population. And so our rat population takes off. Now, an ecologist will have to sit back and say, okay, why is the rat population growing? Right? Well, and how is it growing? Is it growing really rapidly? Is it growing kind of slowly? Is it been happening over years, or is it something that's happening very quickly? And then they have to figure out why. So, what happened in the ecosystem, or what happened between the community relationships that threw this balance off, right? And that's what we're looking at this week is, hey, if we see a change in population size, whether that's up or down, what is causing that, right? What's causing it? And what's the imbalance, right? And what are the pressures? What could that do? What's the ripple effect for the rest of the ecosystem? And so that's what ecology is. Remember, it's all that interconnected relationships between organisms. And so we're going to go over a few. Now, what would change a population, right? Now, if I said the population of Ranch Cucamonga was, I don't know, let's just be silly and say 200,000. We know it's more than that. Okay, so 200,000, right? That means that that's the total number of people in Rancho Cucamonga, right? Now, if we have people having babies, right? As people have babies every day, that could increase our population, right? Our population is going to grow, it's going to go up. But what else might be happening in Rancho Cucamonga? other than just births. We might also have deaths, right? And so deaths are going to do what to our population? They're going to bring our population down. And so it's not necessarily births on their own or deaths on their own, right? We know that both of them are happening. And so we have to look at what is the overall change, right? So if I had 5 births one day and 4 deaths, right? Then that means that we had one more birth than we had death. And so our population is going to increase, right? Because the birth rate is higher than the death rate. And so this is how we calculate change. We have to compare the two to see what direction are we going in, or are we staying the same. If the birth rate and the death rate were equal, then that means our population number doesn't change. So I could say we had 100 births, right, in Rancho Cucamonga, but we also had 100 deaths the same day. So because there's 100 on each, they wash out to 0. And that means that the population of Rancho Cucamonga stayed at 200,000. Now, if I said there were 100 births, right, in Rancho Cucamonga and 50 deaths in Rancho Cucamonga, right? That means the birth rate is higher than the death rate. And so we just grew as a population by 50 people because we saw the difference between the birth rate and the death rate was 50. And so we went up in population by 50. And so we see that this is how we calculate population change. Now, we also know that there's other ways that our population can change, right? We could have people move into the area. We build a lot of homes around here, right? And so we could have people moving into the area with all of our new construction, and we would call that immigration with an I. And I think about immigration with an I like in. They're coming into Rancho Cucamonga. And so immigration is going to increase our population size. So immigration, we have to look at that. We have to see how many people have moved in to the area, right? And so we look at how many people have moved in, and that's going to possibly make our population increase. But there's also emigration with an E, right? And so emigration is like E, exit, right? So they're leaving Rancho Cucamonga. And so we have to keep track of that as well. So how many are leaving? How many are coming in? That's our balancing act, right? So we have immigration in, and we have emigration out. And so in and exit, immigration, emigration. So same idea, 200,000 people in Rancho Cucamonga. We had 100 people move in. We had 50 people move out. Immigration coming in is higher than emigration going out, and so our population just rose in Rancho Cucamonga. And again, the same principle applies. If they're equal, then our population doesn't change. And then we have, those are the 4 factors. So we have 4 factors, right? We have immigration, or we have birth rate, death rate, immigration, and emigration. These are all the things that are going to give population change, right? So now population change, if I'm asking about 4 factors, an ecologist, this is what they're looking at. They're saying, hey, what's the birth rate like in this population, right? So if we were looking at cats in Borneo, they would want to know how many cats are present, that's the population. How many times are they having babies, right? Remember, cats can have a whole litter, and how often are they having babies? So that's going to be our birth rate. Our death rate is how quickly are they dying? Because, when they were getting poisoned, they were dying at a really high rate. And so they weren't having enough time to have babies because they were dying off very quickly. And so we were seeing the birth rate, the population size go down drastically, right? Now, immigration and emigration is another thing they're going to look at. Are there cats from an area coming in, right, or leaving? Now, Borneo is an island, a little hard, to have cats coming in and going out. So what did we do? How did we get cats back into Borneo? We literally made them fall from the sky. We literally took them from another place, and we put them in an airplane, and we put them in big boxes with parachutes on them, and we dropped them out of planes so that they would drop into different sectors of Borneo, and then they released them, and now we had all these cats immigrate into Borneo so that their numbers just went up, right? And we're hoping that they will start having a higher birth rate so they can sustain their numbers. And they're hoping that that birth rate's going to be sustained, and then we're going to balance out our population, right? Now, immigration wise, we would see that if something was going on and we see a big decrease, right, in our population number, we would want to know, why are they leaving? What's making them leave the area? Emigration, right? Is there a threat? Is there something going on? Is there too much competition for food and resources? What's happening that's pushing them out of this area so that their population size is decreasing? And so these are all the things, these are the four factors we have to look at when we start seeing our populations change. Now, we're going to go on and we're going to look at some more relationships a little bit later this week about what could cause these, right? And what's going to limit the amount of growth that we can have. And so there are different graphs that I asked you to do this time around. And so here's just like a regular, if we're looking at population size, right? It's like the number of individuals, how many are part of that population, and the change over time, right? And so this is going to be our basic setup for showing how our population is changing, right, over time. Are they growing really fast? Are they shrinking really fast? Is it decreasing at a rapid rate? Is it a slow growth? Is it more, is it something that is happening and there's no change going on? And so that's what we're going to look at next, is we're going to look at these graphs. Now, there are different types of graphs, right? And so we have what's called exponential growth, right? And an exponential growth is going to be rapid growth. And so it's going to swoop up. We see that in the beginning here, we start off with our population about staying the same, and then all of a sudden it starts to grow at a very rapid rate. And this letter here, this curve almost looks like the letter J. So for exponential growth, I'm going to write that in. This is very rapid growth, right? And we also call it a J curve. And the reason we call it a J curve is because it looks like a quick little swoosh, almost like a Nike swoosh, right? And that's because our population is growing very rapidly, right? So the two factors that would benefit in this for our factors, right, would be immigration. Maybe there's lots moving into the area, or birth rate. There's lots of babies, right, that are happening, and the death rate and emigration are low. And so we're seeing this rapid growth. We're going to see a change going up, right? Now, we also have another type of growth, because we know that in growth, you can't grow forever. Populations can't just keep growing and growing and growing. At some point, they're going to slow down. And we call that the carrying capacity, right? That's where they're going to hit this maximum amount of organisms that can be in that area. And so some of the things that can limit that would be like how much food is present, how much water is present, how much shelter is present. Other things that could limit it might be that there was some kind of unforeseen circumstance, like a flood or a tornado, right? Or something that occurred there that limited all of those other things. It could be that humans are present and we do this thing called spraying DDT all over an area because we think that's the best solution. And now we've affected all kinds of populations, and it's limiting their growth very rapidly. So carrying capacity is the maximum amount, right, of organisms that can be in an area. So we see that with exponential growth, we see all this rapid growth, right? It's taken off, it's a J, but we know this can't happen forever. At some point, there's going to be a limit, and we call that limit, or that maximum capacity, our carrying capacity. And so we see that after a while of exponential growth, we see that exponential growth was happening here, and then all of a sudden it flattens out. Now remember, a flat line, this flat line here, means that our birth rate and our death rate are the same, meaning that there's no growth, there's no change, right? Or our immigration and emigration remain the same. There's no growth, there's no change, right? And so this is when we see a flat line. If it's going up, we know that birth rate and immigration rate are high and death rate and immigration rate are low. But when you see it flatten out, we see that they balance out. If it goes down, right, then we know that emigration with an E and death rate are increasing. And we know that immigration and birth rate are decreasing. So it all depends on which way our line is going. If it goes up, then we know we're growing. Immigration, birth rate. If it goes flat, then we know it's equal. Birth rate and death rate are equal. If it goes down, then we know that immigration and death rate are up and immigration and birth rate are down. So we're seeing that we can kind of follow the trend of what's happening in our population change. Now, because it looks like it flattens out, it kind of looks like the letter S. So we call this an S curve. And this is called logistic growth or logistical growth, same thing. Now, the difference between these two, right, is we have our J curve, which is rapid growth. It's taking off. Birth rates are high. Immigration is high. All is good, right? But we can't carry on like that forever. So eventually we're going to hit this thing called logistical growth, meaning we know that it's going to end at some point. And so ecologists, when things are happening like this, they're trying to figure out, hey, what is going to be this point in time where we're going to level out? What are we going to run out of, right? And so we would see that this leveling off here, even starting to go down a little bit, is called hitting this thing called the carrying capacity. Now, the carrying capacity, remember, is going to be where we can't hold. It's like the maximum amount of organisms that can be in that area, right? So we would say where the line flattens out, this is going to be our carrying capacity. So that's our carrying capacity because we see that it naturally hit its maximum limit of how many organisms could be there. And that's what turned it from a J curve to an S curve, logistical growth, because of this carrying capacity. Now, here's the thought, guys. Did you know that humans, our population on Earth, is in a J curve? That means we're growing at a rapid rate ever since the Industrial Revolution. But what does ecology tell us? Ecology tells us that we can't keep doing that forever. Eventually, we're going to hit a carrying capacity. And now when we hit this carrying capacity, we know that we're going to balance out. That means that death rate and birth rate are going to be the same, and immigration and immigration are going to be the same. And if we go above this a little bit, then there's going to be some death and immigration that's going to have to occur in order for us to get back equal again, because it's a maximum number of what could be supported on Earth. And we see that humans right now, we have an impact on all the ecosystems of the world because we basically go in and we throw off a lot of the balance in our food chains. And so we're going to be looking at the human's impact on all these other populations around us because we are part of ecosystems. We can put huge amounts of pressure on the other community members in our ecosystem, and it can throw us all off balance. And so we're going to see what are some of those limiting things, those limiting factors. So humans are in this exponential growth pattern, right? And eventually we're going to hit this thing called our carrying capacity. Now, in some countries, we may have already hit our carrying capacities. And so you see that they're very dense areas, right? And there's not a lot of resources going around. And there's a lot of things that happen there. We have other parts of our land that have plenty of space, plenty of resources, and you're going to see exponential growth. And that's where you see where people actually move out of an area, right? They say, oh, I'm going to get out of the city and I'm going to go move to the suburbs, right? Well, why? Because in the city, we're starting to reach this carrying capacity of resources, right? And so it's easier, right? Rapid growth in these areas where we can build and we can make more stores and we can do all of that. However, we're not the only population on Earth. And so when we move into new areas, we're putting pressure on that ecosystem and all the other organisms that live there. And we're going to look at those different factors next week. So this is getting us ready for that. So be aware. So we have exponential growth, which is looks like a J. And then we have logistic growth, which means, hey, we can't grow like that forever. It's eventually going to flatten out. So it starts to look like an S. And what is making it do that? It's this limit, this maximum capacity called the carrying capacity. So these are the different things you need to be aware of, right? This is what I wanted you to practice today. I will be showing you a video, and you're going to have to watch that this week. And then we're going to be talking about those factors that can put pressure on populations to where it limits their amount of growth, right? And so we'll be looking at those again this week as well. So everything's about population change this week on your quiz. I've already put up a quizzes for you to practice, and it's unlimited time. So just practice, 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 practice. It will close on Thursday, 11:45 p.m. And then you'll have your quiz on Friday. You only get one chance on the quiz on Friday. I'm having some issues with people going into a quiz and not finishing a quiz, and then it doesn't post a grade, right? And so it becomes a zero. I have some people who hit turn in on the quiz, but then there's no score. And so we need to make sure, I would just say, I highly recommend that you take a screenshot of your quizzes. And even if you open up your quizzes, if you log in and you go into your quizzes and you just take a snapshot of whatever the percentage was on your dashboard. I know someone has done that for me, and that helps. If you're like, Miss Calloway, I did it and I have it right here. I just need evidence. Okay. So when I'm putting stuff in, I'm not trying to be mean or anything. I just need to know what to write. Score wise, you will have the opportunity to try to retake the ecology quiz if you'd like to this Friday. The sex linked quiz is closed. If for some reason you did not get to the sex linked quiz, you need to contact me individually, and we'll arrange a time where I will open that test up again just for the people who have contacted me. So, um, guys, assignments, just turn them in. Okay, at this point, we're all trying to get on the same page, yes, but just understand that if you're turning stuff in late, I have 175 kids, and I'm trying to grade the stuff you're giving me, and I'm also trying to keep up with the stuff I just assigned in the late work. So I need you to be a little bit patient, and I need you to understand that the more you are on time with stuff, the easier it will be for me to get you your grade, um, more punctual. So I hope that you're having a wonderful week so far. I hope you had a refreshing weekend. I know we have a lot of rain, so please make sure you're staying home, you're staying warm, and I look forward to talking to you guys soon.